a lot of the players that I'm seeing do well in this England team, this Euros, and there's not many, are the players that are ballers. Well, look at Eze. Eze just gets the ball and runs at players.
Kane Badenoch in a high position. We had, Priti Patel, Swella Braverman, Home Secretaries, Kwasi Kwarteng as a Chancellor. They had no interest whatsoever in trying to advance the rights or lives of minorities.
Saka this season is going to come back smoke.
Yeah, but Jordan, this is what I'm trying to say. This is what I'm trying to say about the last 3 years. He has been on.
He has.
So
you ain't seen nothing yet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm joking. Hello, that's not how we're starting the podcast this week. This is Whisper It Loudly. I'm Jordan Jarrett-Bryan. I'm joined with Troy, this week. Good morning, Troy.
Hello. Good morning.
You weren't here with us last week. Did you feel a little bit...
No, I didn't feel...
Swimming in, what do they call it, choppy waters? Is that what it was?
I don't really do it all. And if I talk, I'm then going to maybe argue. Let me just step back. And I thought it was a very good pod, by the way.
Thank you very much. It's done really well.
But also I wanted to mention this morning, or shall we get into that now or shall we not?
I don't know, what do you want to get into? What do you want to or not want to get into?
Well, the fact that not only was you late, but you got off the wrong... did you get off the wrong start?
Well,
what was it?
I didn't mention this last week because I knew Darren was going to kill me for it. Because I'm always like, Darren, don't be late. And Darren's big thing is, I'm never late. And he's often late, right? But last week, I got off the train one stop too far. One stop too far. And I was like, oh man, I had to get an Uber back. I made it in time but I didn't tell Darren because I thought, if you made it on time, I'm not late, why let him know that you were almost late?
So today?
Today, I got off one stop too early. I got off a stop too early. I was paranoid, thinking to myself, it's this one, right? I got off the train, I was like, it's not this one. It's not too early. So yeah, I'm a mess. And this week I was late. So apologies, and anyone that knows me knows I despise lateness. It's probably the one thing I really hate. So I accept I was late. I apologise. Hands up. But we move. Otherwise, how are you? You good?
I'm absolutely tremendous. Yeah, enjoying some real downtime, which is really good. Doing what I want, when I want, how I want.
Yeah, you can wake up and make dinner and breakfast whenever you want.
I can do anything. I'm cooking at the moment, which is I'm really enjoying it.
What are you cooking?
Anything and everything.
Okay.
I will have a speciality. I think it's I think it's go. Whatever the taste of the others is like, well, we don't know, but yeah, I'm enjoying some real good downtime.
Good, you deserve it. You do deserve it. And on that note, before we move on to the pod. Your farewell dinner was fantastic.
Thank you.
We really enjoyed it. We had it was Chris Paris who organised a farewell dinner for the great Troy Townsend, and it was a pleasure to be there. Great people in the room. Food was good that day. I don't know about your food, but the food that was served for us on that day was very good. So big up yourself.
Very emotional.
It was very emotional and a great way to bookend your time. Kick it out.
Appreciate it.
Just before we get to the pod again, don't forget, if you're not subscribed, please do so here on YouTube. We are growing and growing every single week. We're listening to what you guys are telling us. We're reading what you guys are telling us. Please keep the conversations going.
Even when you cuss.
Even if you disagree, which when it comes to me, it's often the case. Keep it coming. This is,
I actually enjoy those comments. Those comments of, you lot don't know what you're talking about and blah, blah, blah.
Because the truth is, they're probably right. They're probably right. But you know what? We're going to keep talking what we're talking. And we want you guys to keep responding and contributing as well. So we're on socials. Follow us there. Keep the conversations going on. This is what the podcast is all about. All right. We're going to talk about some politics in the second half of the podcast. We have a guest coming in shortly. But let's do the football first. Troy.
Yes.
England are into a semi-final for the European Championships. And by the time people listen to this, they might be in a final. They might have won it. By the time people listen to this podcast.
There's lots of possibilities, isn't there?
But let's go with the point of recording.
Yeah.
England are in a semi-final of the European Championships.
Very interesting Saturday, if I may go back, because I had to watch the penalty shootout at a dance show with my granddaughter just about to appear, and I've got penalties.
Them ones, yep.
Every single bloke in the room was doing it, in the audience was doing it, by the way.
Yes, of course.
So what happens is you're all at different stages, aren't you? Mm-hmm. So I'm watching Trent walk up to the pen. My granddaughter's not on the stage yet, by the way. And this geezer goes, yes! Get in. And I
killed it for you.
He's absolutely, he's the earliest one, so he's killed it for everybody. So I managed to watch the game, the penalty, the extra time I had to watch in the bar on my phone, and then I watched the penalties, like I said, whilst we was in the auditorium. Listen, they got through. They won. Simple as that. Penalties were first class, as I think you may have spoken about with others before or whatever. But
We'll get to the penalties,
yeah, we won. It's going to be an interesting game. The game against the Netherlands. They've been okay. They've got obviously Gakpo, who's storming the tournament, and I think is will make Liverpool think about where they play him next season for sure, or the new manager. But it's going to be an interesting game. I actually think the game against the Netherlands, and if England get past that and play Spain or France, these games are made for England more than what the other games have been. And I thought the Swiss were tremendous in their approach, but I've not heard a lot of this. We have to acknowledge the fact that England went one down with 15 minutes to go, and then turned the tap. And then, I think the Swiss dropped deeper as they did, but, England applied the pressure. It then went into a little bit of, I hate extra times now. It's just, do you know what I mean? Yeah. But I think there was a confidence there, even with Harry Kane going off, that the penalty takers were, great. We're going to be great. So
let's get to penalties in a minute, but just back on the fact that England are into a semi-final. I mean, I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that England are stinking out the place, but they seem to now be like embracing their stinkiness. They seem to be like, just like, you know what?
Man, call
we
it
stink.
stinkiness,
Like, we stink, but you know what? It's working for us. And I just wonder how much of that is to be kind of, I guess, analysed, because Gareth Southgate the football is not good. It's almost getting worse. I mean, to be fair, this game it was marginally better, but we're talking from a very, very low bar. But prior to this game, the football has been getting worse and worse, I think, by each game. And I just wonder if I've heard the theory that Southgate has mastered tournament football.
No,
and I just wondered how much you buy into that. You're not having that theory? There's
a lot of theories running around, and I think England have been quite fortunate. For Germany, Spain, France, they all go into the same side, and all of a sudden there's this supposedly clear run to the final. And then you play your first knockout round and you think, are we just about to sneak through that? You play the second one and you go through penalties. And then you've got this massive game coming up, and there's a great rivalry between the Netherlands and England, isn't there? I'll be honest with you, if England win it, the same way as if the French win it, because using your terms, they have stunk out the place as well, by the way, with probably a better squad than the English squad. I don't think anyone cares.
I think at this point now, nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
I think at this point, everyone's kind of got over the fact that they're not playing good football.
I'm going to pick up on your point. We had a discussion, didn't we, a few weeks ago when you said this was a really bad tournament. And I argued against that because I thought there were some really, really good games. I'm saying now it's a bad tournament. The longer we've gone on into the knockout phase, Turkey-Austria was a really good game, by the way. I thought that was a really good game. And the Dutch versus Turkey. So there's a common theme there, isn't there? That the Turkish actually were playing some really, really good football, but couldn't get over the line. But I do look at it and I think to myself, what is going on with European football? There doesn't seem to be this get up and go. There doesn't seem to be, well, look, let's go and beat them with all our qualities. And if they come at us, we know how to defend. It just seems to be this very placid, laid back, all of a, like, nothing of a muchness, to be honest. And I've got to be honest, while I'm watching some of the games, I'm just doing other things. And I like my football, but it's almost like the TV's on in the background. Yeah, so something's got to give. But, like I said, whoever lifts that trophy or whoever gets to the final first of all will be like, well, we've got here on merit and we don't care whether you like how we're playing or not. We're here. But I often think about what the players like in those circumstances. So Mbappe's obviously had a broken nose, and I do think that has hindered him quite a lot. But people won't get it or maybe understand it, but I think it's hindered him quite a lot. Is he enjoying playing in that French team? Are a lot of those players enjoying? I watched Dembele come on the other day.
Lively.
Frightening. But where was that Dembele the game before and the game before that?
Yeah.
So are we saying that he can only come off the bench to prove a point? The lad is frightening. So it'll be interesting to see the quarterfinals and semi-finals, and then obviously the final as well.
I think your point on Mbappe is a good one, because I spoke to a doctor, one of my
Personal.
best friend's partners. My best friend's partners is a doctor, and she loves football, and she said that when he broke his nose, that she had a very, very strong hunch the break of the nose was a lot worse than was being reported. And to the point where she was saying, if anyone else broke their nose in any other circumstance, you really shouldn't go out of your house and be active for 2 months.
With the potential of someone banging it, knocking it again.
She said it should be 2 months rest. She said it was a really bad break. Now, I saw a press conference that Mbappe did or an interview maybe he did, where he spoke about the fact that, you know, he finds it hard to breathe. He can't breathe at night. He's not sleeping. And when you think about that thing, that mask being pressed on your face, and obviously it's not pressed, but it's there to protect his nose. That's gonna really impact how you play. Mm-hmm. And another point the doctor actually made to me was, you got to think about, he's got no peripheral vision. Yeah. He's playing football with no peripheral vision. So all those things are gonna impact. You're thinking the ball comes to you, can I head it? Yeah. Even if I clash with another person. So all of these things are gonna impact his game, and I think are a massive contributing factor as to why he's playing so poorly. But I think there's probably commercial pressure from sponsors that, he needs to play France. I know.
Absolutely.
And the fact that he came off before penalties says to me that he's in pain, and he thought. I'm surmising. I'm guessing here. Just the bench. Look, I'm in pain here. I know you want me to stay on the pitch. I can't do no more.
Well, he actually banged his head.
He did.
And although it wasn't on the nose, I could imagine the shudder of that. What that creates in the nose as well.
Even if you don't bang your nose, if you bang any part of your head, your nose is going to feel it.
And the fact that it's a fresh injury, so it's not like he's had it for a month and he's kind of used to it now, and it's raw. And I think that's had a massive impact on his performance. I don't think they're playing him in the right place. I don't think he is the 9. No. He's better coming off the side. If you've got him and Dembele coming off the sides. But look, the way the French team have gone about it, I still think the Spanish are the standout feature team, but they're a young team, and this is their first experience now of the latter stages of a competition. I would want them to win because of the freeness in which those players, they have got an unbelievable team, by the way. So to beat Germany when it seemed like, the Germans were backing it, they've got the crowd, they were creating a few chances, that was a good game, but then to go and win it in the manner and style that they won it after he pulled off all 3 of his forwards. So he changed all of that. He changed 2 of his midfielders. I thought it was a great victory. So I would like to see Spain in the final, but I can't call any of these 2 games.
Nor can I. And just finally, again, back on the point of how to win these Euros, I've not watched any of the Copa America just because of the time difference, and it's too much football.
I watched Brazil, Uruguay the other day.
I've not seen any of it.
Got to be honest.
Not good. Well, this is the point I'm gonna make. I wonder if winning World Cups, Euros, Copa Americas, AFCON, all these global tournaments now, the way is to just be defensively secure and maybe just bore you up. Because I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's 7 games to win a World Cup. It's 7 games to win the Euros. Just win.
The Argentinians weren't boring, were they, when they won the World Cup? I'm a Brazilian fan as such, and I used to watch Brazil no matter what time it was in the morning, remembering their games realistically are going to start earliest 11 p.m. and then 2 hours. I used to get up and watch them all the time. The only reason I watched or started to watch this game was because I was watching a film.
Okay.
It's half an hour to go. I thought, I might as well watch this. It's a big game. I've got to tell you, I watched the first half in and out. I then woke up for the penalties.
Oh, wow. I missed most of the game. Came back in for the
from what I hear, and I'm going to big up what Ronaldinho said here, this Brazilian team is not good to watch.
They've not been good to watch for a decade.
Well, no, I disagree with that. But they haven't been good to watch over the last period of time.
When was the last time you saw a Brazilian team that made you want to watch them?
There's no flair. There's no... Like, that samba style of play has gone, and it's now a rigid style. There's players there, but there's a rigid style that actually is more European than it is South American.
Well, maybe this goes to Bielsa's point that you mentioned earlier on about him. He made comments. I forgot he was responding to somebody.
I think it was in a press conference.
Yeah. But someone had said something, and I think but anyway, I'm paraphrasing here, but his words were, he's not happy with how football is going.
Yeah.
He thinks that the flair, the individuality, that's even a word, the expressiveness of the skillful players has been dragged out of them. And I think it's been something that I've heard throughout this tournament in regards to certain flair players that are just now functional players and now system players. And he's not liking it. And it's something that was maybe worth a different discussion at a later date.
Football is just a product now.
Yes,
I think that was what he was trying to get to, that it's a product now rather than a spectacle.
Yes, yes.
And he would like to provide a spectacle for fans and you know, what he's doing with Uruguay at the moment. But he sees far too much of the product that has that behind it, the money element behind it.
The best things about football tend to be off the pitch rather than on the pitch. The controversies, the referees, the you know, talk about too many fixtures. That's something I think we should definitely kind of delve into maybe when Hugh and Darren are with us and we can go get into it a bit, because I think there's something in that. I think it's affecting England as well in terms of a lot of the players that I'm seeing do well in this England team, this Euros, and there's not many, are the players that are called ballers. Well, look at Eze. Eze just gets the ball and runs at players. Look at Saka. Saka gets the ball and runs at players. Look at, I think someone like Phil Foden is being systemized and institutionalized into a system when I don't think that's the player that he is. You've got players that are told, when he's there, you're there. When he's back there, you go. And it's taken the individual nature and the individual creative freedom out of players rather than just pass and move.
Just think about this. England's created freedom ended after 29 minutes in the first game. That's when I saw a lot of their promising, proactive football as they blasted into the competition, got their goal and seemed like, wow, this is everything we've been waiting for. Then they went back to type. A couple of things that you've mentioned there. Saka. Remember, there was a call for him to go and play left back. So what was he doing at right wing or right wing back? Do you know what I mean? He's not had a great tournament, but he's a young man who's so level-headed that he doesn't let it affect his ability to then go and perform like he did against Switzerland.
Just give me the ball when I play.
There you go. Yeah, Foden, I agree with you. I think he's being pigeonholed. He's been pushed from pillar to post. But I listened back to one of the pods and I said that Southgate's just got to believe in Phil Foden. And I think what he's done is he's not taken my words, but he's taken that I believe in Phil and he's just going to play him through the thick and through the thin. And I think Phil Foden needs that to finally come out the other side and go, look, I've done the basics well. I will now show you that I can go and play.
This is my point. It has,
listen,
has,
to this
has Phil been
competition,
kept?
Yeah, but for this competition, but I don't think it's too late. I think the massive issue in this England team, if we talk about progressing going forward, is Harry Kane.
Yeah.
He is the massive issue. What are they getting out of Harry Kane at the moment? And I'll tell you now, I saw him run quicker to go and celebrate once Trent put the ball in, you know, the penalty in than what I've seen him throughout the whole competition. He's not moving. I picked up on a point, and I'm bigging you up quite a lot here. So I hope I want to return the favour.
You know, behind the camera there, Dan. I mean, I say what I say. I take the heat of the time, but afterwards they all come back and say, you know what, Jordan,
I'm not saying I'm coming back,
you're right.
But
that's all right. I love you still.
I do believe that he's not fit. I do believe that he's carrying that back injury that of the last few games, the injury that took him off of the semi-final, where people were going, how can you take Harry Kane? He was injured.
Yeah.
That's why the manager took him off. Tuchel took him off. It's very hard because his numbers are amazing, as we all know. Yeah. So I do get it, but I also think that Gareth could have took him. I mean, again, we're talking about substitutions. Everyone says England's substitutions worked. It takes time for them to work, doesn't it? And I just think that Harry could have come off a lot longer. And I'm not even saying for Ivan Toney. I still have this opinion that England are not stretching teams and causing them to face back towards their own goal rather than face forward. And I just think Ollie Watkins could have done that job tremendously well. He also takes penalties. I think young Gordon, who's obviously now not going to get a sniff, could have done that as well for England. But here we are moaning again as such, and they're in the semi-final.
They are.
So we can critique his team as much as we want. We can actually go, I would have done it differently as much as we want. When you're in a high-pressured situation, sometimes you need those around you to keep you sane. So all these proposed managers out there that think they can do a better job than Gareth, go ahead, see what you can do.
We'll touch very briefly on the semi-finals, but just before we do that, I want to talk about the penalties. Go back to the penalty shootout that England came through against Switzerland, because I wasn't actually fearful.
No.
I wasn't. Normally with England and with my team Arsenal, there's a little. I wouldn't say I was confident, but I wasn't. I was neutral. I was a bit like, I think they will win this. Not only because a significant part of the squad have players that are takers for their clubs, but also I just feel that these players are built different, and I feel that these players take penalties seriously. And what I mean by that is, one of the worst, I hate football cliches, right? One of the worst cliches, or one of the worst sayings in football that I've always pushed against is that penalties, it's a lottery. It's like, no, it's not. It's not a lottery. It's about technique and skill and mental strength. It's not a lottery. It's not. People that say it's a lottery are from nations that do poorly in penalty shootouts. I never hear the Germans say it's a lottery. Do you know what I mean? It's not a lottery. And I think these players take it seriously. I think these players prep, and I understand there's only so much prep you can do in terms of environment. You can't recreate an environment. I get that. But there's a mental toughness combined with a process that I think your Palmers, your Sakas, your Kanes, all the players take very, very, very seriously. And anyone can miss, but I think that was the reason why I thought these guys are going to do it. But what I want to ask you though is, because I saw you did a piece on BBC this week about the makeup of, or the importance of the players that took those penalties and coming through that. Just elaborate a little bit on why those 5 takers scoring well was significant.
Look, all 5, some might not like this, but all 5 came from a black heritage. Cole Palmer, as cold as you like, that first penalty, by the way. You look at,
I love him.
The Ivan Toney. Yeah,
I love him. So the fact that he just thought, give me the ball, I'm taking the pen, I'll take the first one. Yeah. I love that.
When you think of the pressure that Saka, Tony, in regards to not only the penalty situation, but in the back of their minds, and I'm not saying this at the forefront of their minds, but what missing a penalty would have led to. If you miss a penalty for England and you're black, it leads to a pile-on. And it's not just a pile-on because you should have scored the penalty. It's a pile-on based on the colour of your skin, by the way. And there'll be many that will go, here he goes again. And I've seen a lot of comments after my piece. Race baiting and do you know what I mean? Here he goes, the biggest race card there is going, and this, that and the other. And you haven't felt that abuse that Saka felt after the Euros. You haven't felt that abuse. Ivan Toney, the most racially abused player that there was the season before last in our leagues. This season, 8 months out, or however long he was out, he was still being racially abused for just being Ivan Toney, And I think those guys rising above, Jude Bellingham, who I don't think has probably suffered the racism, but he's felt Vinicius Jr. and he stood up and supported him. And I think that applies to the pressure of taking it. Trent, he's been much maligned. He tried to go and play in midfield. He was then battered. They tried again. And then he's been kept out of it and then brought on and produces a penalty of such class. So there'll be many who say, here he goes. He's back, this race stuff. When Harry Kane missed against France in the World Cup, I didn't see him getting battered because of the colour of his skin. And by the way, we're still looking for that football. I don't know where Harry Kane put that, but it's somewhere. But he got battered for taking a poor penalty. But it wasn't battered as such. Do you know what I mean?
He was battered for footballing reasons.
Yeah, but I always think that every time we see a black heritage player step up with the 3 lions on their chest, if you score, you're the best thing. You amazing! I can't believe. This is brilliant. And we saw the reaction to all the penalties, didn't we? If you miss, lo and behold, you can go on your socials 2 minutes later and it starts, the ripple effect starts. So I was very proud, very pleased. I also, like you, I was confident. I looked at the penalty takers and thought,
had they missed, I'd have been shocked.
Had they missed, but
I'd have been shocked.
I'm not sure I would have been shocked. Jordan, we've got 2 to go. There could be 2 more penalty shootouts. And I guarantee if England get 15 out of 15, they would have done an unbelievable job. and those lads need to be put on a platform like no other. I disagree with you a little bit where you say they're taking it more serious. I don't think that the England players of the past didn't take it serious. I just think there was almost this attitude stepping up, defeated already. There was this, you know, if it's Stuart Pearce, if it's David Batty, if it's Chris Waddle, you know, it's this pressurised situation that they've never overcome. Remember, England overcame in 2018 when they beat Colombia. And that set us through to the semi-finals, I believe. And the penalties even then were very, very good. Mm-hmm. We go to the Euros and we say, well, yeah, but they fouled at home. They fouled. Two of the players had only just stepped on the field of play. Mm. I don't think in his right mind Gareth would ever do that again, send Rashford and Sancho, who probably didn't even touch the ball.
Can I pose a theory on that?
To go and take the pens. Go on.
Sorry, because Southgate got a lot of heat for that. And people saying, oh, he's from under the bus. And I understand why people would say that. I've got a theory, and it's just a theory. People say, why would you let three black players take the...
No, it's not. I don't believe, like, three black players. I don't think that would enter his mind. Are you saying that would enter his mind?
No. Well, the response I was hearing from a lot of black people was, well, why would you have the three last players who are black take those crucial penalties? You're almost setting them up to fail.
No chance.
Right?
No chance.
My theory is, and it's just a theory, I could be wrong, how about if it was the opposite? How about if Gareth Southgate thought, how amazing would it be if the guy that wins the Euros for a penalty shootout is a black man? Mm. How iconic would it be if Bukayo Saka is the man that scores the penalty that wins England their first major tournament and their first Euros ever? So
I didn't get that far.
It's a theory that he got a lot of heat, but I thought to myself, Southgate is he seems to be a very, very emotionally in tuned person. He is. I wouldn't put it past him to think, I would love it if Marcus Rashford was the symbol of our Euros win.
I can get that. The only thing I was looking at is why would you send an even younger Saka up as the fifth? Now, he might have been confident and said, you know what, I can do this, Gav, I've got this. But after those two other misses, I think his confidence levels would have gone down, now feeling the pressure of, and if I miss...
But Southgate couldn't have changed him at that point.
No, I get that. And look, he is a man that looks across his squad and he gets the diversity in his squad. Mm-hmm. I had the real privilege of delivering an educational session to not just Gareth, Stevie Holland, all the England coaches from the youth setups as well. I remember showing him an image of an England squad, an under-17 squad that had beaten Brazil, unheard of. Mm-hmm. In there was Steven Gerrard's cousin, Bobby Duncan, who got a hat-trick. And I showed them the picture and... what was your first thought? I said, winners. Do you know what I mean? This, that, and the other. And then I posted the comments against all the black players. Mm-hmm. There was 6 black players, I think, 7 maybe. And I remember some of the comments were, what is this? The Nigerian national squad, laugh out loud. Black players shouldn't be representing England. And listen, I'm going to say this, and I don't want no applause for it, but I think that's the first time that he recognised the damage that happens to some of the black players that represent this country at a youth level. He spoke to me for about 15, 20 minutes afterwards about something needs to be done. He mentioned me in a press conference when they played the Netherlands a few years ago, mm-hmm. just saying, you know, we had a presentation. We are now going to kind of look after our black England players because we didn't realise the impact of playing for England, what it meant. And then I got squeezed out of scenario, you know, but I don't think that was from him. That was from other people mm-hmm. that felt could do a better job, mm-hmm. you know. But I'm pleased to say that I highlighted that because ultimately, if you're not aware, you don't know, do you? Yeah. So raising that awareness to him and others within the room was massively important. I'm pleased. I would hope that is where the start point was of reflecting on how black representatives of England, how they're talked about on these social media platforms. And I do get it. He's a very conscious man about that as well. So you're right to raise that point.
Just finally, I just want to go back to a quote from that thing you did with the BBC where you said, I think there are people that are waiting for black players to miss. Again, just unpack that a little bit. Do you believe that there are genuinely non-black people in this country who support England that at that moment or during any shootout their racism would supersede
Absolutely.
the need for England.
Absolutely.
So they would rather Saka miss than England get knocked out if it means abusing him than him scoring and then not being able to abuse him.
No. Don't. Many others have said this. I'm not saying that they would take Saka, whoever it may be, missing, and then use that as their fuel for racism. The racism is within them.
Mm-hmm.
At the moment, they have to celebrate the black players.
Mm-hmm.
And I use the example of Raheem Sterling in the last Euros, who scored England's opening goals, and everyone was jumping up and down. Yeah? He was, Raheem, amazing. By the end of it, those people have turned their mindset around because it was 3 black players that missed the pens that cost them the final, as far as they're concerned. So it's always what's perceived as a mistake or a disappointing strike of a ball from their eyes that allows and fuels their racism to come alive. So you don't just become a racist because you believe that a black player has done something wrong. It's in there, it's within you. So it automatically turns back to your default system because we've lost a penalty shootout. So for me, again, I said that I didn't think if Saka missed his pen, but England had won, I don't think Saka would have got a lot of abuse because he was England's best player. He was England's best player, outstanding by far. If one of those players, and we're in the final, misses a penalty again and England lose, I'm telling you now, you're going to get the same thing that happened in Euro 2020. The same thing. I don't care what the UK policing unit said about how they're monitoring them. They've already said that they've highlighted a number of racist fans on social media, and that was before the quarter-final stage. My thing is, what are you doing about it? Don't highlight them. Are you arresting them? Are you holding them to account? So for me, they're there, they're out there, they've always been out there. Like those that commented on that post yesterday from the BBC and then called me a race baiter. And also one comment was, he's bringing racism alive where racism doesn't exist anymore.
Madness.
So they are there and they're waiting, and I would hope that this time around, like you said, we can glorify in those black players being part of a multicultural England team that brings home the Euros.
Well, I would want to conclude and just kind of pay tribute to Bukayo Saka because I've just got. I think everyone loves him. Well, what is that? I am an Arsenal boy, so I love him. He's my guy. We call him Star Boy. Yeah. We love him.
No, he's unbelievable.
But for me, Troy, it's so much more than him being my guy. I held up Marcus Rashford after what he did with the free school meals for young people. I don't support United. In fact, I'm the opposite of supporting United. I can't stand Man United. But it was so much more than what team he played for.
Yeah, of course.
And it's the same here. Bukayo Saka, people talk about him being lovely and he's got a nice smile and he's so friendly. And I heard Luke Shaw really paying tribute to the character of Bukayo Saka and how in the camp everyone loves him and you can believe that. But I just think, and I'm not saying anything particularly original or new here, for him to go through what you've explained there in the 2021 final at that age, with the world watching him, the abuse he gets online. And as an Arsenal fan, I see him week in, week out. To see him respond that season that followed that, he took every penalty and scored all of them bar one. I think the West Ham one was the only one he missed.
But it wasn't even the penalties. It was the fact that this year I'd gone through that experience, like you said.
And got better.
He didn't one of the things I said was actually the last 3 years since the final, we talk about people's mindsets here and mentality. He's one of the best players in Europe. He also had a more than decent World Cup, by the way.
He did.
So that puts him on the World Cup platform.
Yeah.
So actually, out of that and listen, I heard the term redemption quite a lot. This is not redemption. This is not like Saka has been the player and growing as an international personality ever since the time that he walked back into the Emirates or the training ground
100%.
and saw all those messages of love and support 100%. That came from right around the country.
100%.
That must have filled his heart with so much. I'm going to do it for all of you. Yeah. And I'm going to do it for myself.
I want to big up my club, Arsenal, because I think the work I've heard was done when he came back to Arsenal that summer was to ensure that he was under no misunderstanding. You are loved, you are valued, you are respected, and you're our guy. And we are going to support you, whatever. But you're right, it was beyond Arsenal.
It was beyond Arsenal.
It was bigger than the club. I think the nation took Saka in and said, you know what? And you're right to mention Carl Anker's on the piece for The Athletic, where he talks about the fact, what you just said. This isn't redemption. Redemption is when you've done something wrong and you come back from that. He did nothing wrong.
Nothing wrong.
So I just want to just pay tribute to Bukayo Saka.
But he answered the critics. all of those critics, all of those people that tried to belittled him. By the way, he answered them immediately. I remember him coming on. Do you remember the Brentford game? You might remember the Brentford game was his first game. He came on a sub. Was his first game after the Euros. Yeah. He came on a sub.
Yes.
Maybe other people couldn't hear it, but I've got a unique ear. And I heard the booing.
Saying, yes.
And I heard the you let your country down.
Yes.
And I know that was said to a lot of players, but particularly to him,
yeah.
I felt do you know what I mean? It's one of them but after that, his quality, and his quality. Where the only reason people may boo him, and I don't think they're doing it now, will be because he is that good and he's going to hurt their team.
But you know what? In a way, and this kind of goes to, I don't know if you saw Djokovic yesterday.
Yes, I did.
And he was saying about the fact that the player he was playing, I've forgotten the player's name, was something on the sonic sounds of Rune. And people might try and, no, we're not booing him because we're racist. We're booing him because we want him to miss the penalty or we want him to miss the free kick, and he's the rival in the Premier League.
That old chestnut.
We need to be very careful about. Do you know what I mean?
You know why? Because booing is not an offence.
No,
let's be honest.
Get away with
you can get away with booing,
and it
doesn't matter. Like what people say, booing is not an offence.
Yeah, but we know what it is.
But we know.
But I just want to just say, you know what? Una better be careful this year, because Bakasaka's come back this year in the Premier League on smoke. Your team Tottenham, Dan, your team Palace, Darren, your team. Saka this season is going to come back on smoke.
Yeah, but Jordan, this is what I'm trying to say. This is what I'm trying to say about the last 3 years. He has been on smoke.
He has?
So
you ain't seen nothing yet. You ain't seen nothing yet, right?
Listen, I want to called out Saka, and quite rightly, I want to call out Jude Bellingham. And again, from the start of the competition, I've said that he's a tired footballer. Yeah, I don't think England are going to get what they think Real Madrid have had for most of the season. He's not running on empty, as we can tell by the goal in the last minute, the overhead kick in the last minute, and the opening goal. But he's not the Jude Bellingham that everyone expected. But this guy, I don't know what his inner strength is amazing. Very on the similar line, because every time I see him walk on the pitch, it's almost like his chest is puffed out, his shoulders are back. I'm here. Yeah. Whatever you've got to say. And he's been very critical, hasn't he, of the English media.
But he's backing it up. But he's not playing well, but he's delivering the moments.
But he's staying there. Yes. And even his pen.
Yes.
And if there was I was like, please, not Jude.
Yes.
Please, do you know what I mean? Please, not Jude. Yeah. But again, struck with the ultimate confidence. And I watched every single player as they turned away from their spot.
Yeah, they knew.
There's an arrogance there.
They knew, yeah.
And it's not often that I see an arrogance in England
players.
I
agree.
And I love that.
We've got to wrap because we've got to move on in a minute. But just briefly, looking ahead to the semi-final and then hopefully the final, just briefly on the game against Holland and then against what would be then France or Spain, what do you reckon?
What, result-wise, squad-wise, team-wise? Team-wise, I think England stay the same.
Okay.
Everyone from the England camp and that were on the BBC spoke about this unbelievably better performance. We ain't got time to go into that, time for the BBC.
It was bad though.
All right. We ain't got time for the halftime chat of the BBC. I watched the first 45 minutes in peace. So what these experts were telling me, all right, so we don't speak. I think he goes with the same. Listen, my big, massive worry, Guille comes back. Sorry, Mark Guille comes back.
Yeah, I agree with that.
My one big, massive worry is Kyle Walker. Look, two worries. Kyle Walker, Harry Kane. Yes, I think Harry can deal with it. Harry doesn't care. I think he'll shrug it off. And if there's a moment that he can slot a ball home, he will. I don't know what's going on with Kyle Walker. Well, maybe we do. But Kyle Walker is not performing at any level that Kyle Walker has produced over an extended period of time.
It's just one tournament too many.
No, it's not one. No, I don't believe that. His pace is still there. His reading of the game is still there. His quality driving forward is still there. We haven't seen him drive forward. No. We haven't seen his pace. He's actually been outpaced in certain situations and then technically done. Yeah. I can't remember the other thing I said about him, but I'm worried about Carl. Carl needs a performance in this semi-final. I believe they'll set up probably similar, the same way. Don't think Luke Shaw comes back in yet, although there's a clamour for Luke Shaw, isn't there? I think that's what you would.
I'd start him. I would say, I think the fact that he may only give you an hour, I think is outweighed by the balance he gives.
I get the balance.
Just give me an hour.
I get the balance.
Just give me an hour.
And we are going to need balance against a better nation, aren't we?
I think so.
Okay. You go there. I'll stay with Trippier if Trippier's fit. I'm not saying it's my preferred option. No. I know Dan's looking at me saying, when are you going to talk about Tyreek Mitchell?
We ain't got time for
Tyreek Mitchell. But I do think they stay the same. If they get through and play the Spanish, I think they have to rip up the formula and change, because Spain will pass through them at will.
I agree with that.
If they play France, it's probably going to be the worst and most boring final.
It's the bore-off. Who can bore out? Who can stink the place out quicker?
But England have got to pay back after the quarterfinal in the World Cup.
I think they will beat Holland tonight. I'm going out tonight. Tomorrow, I'm going out tonight. I think I'm not sure they beat Spain or France, if I'm being honest. But hey,
anyone can do it.
Just to let the viewers and listeners know, we will be doing another pod next week if England win the Euros. If not, this will be our last pod for the summer. We're taking a little slight break.
For a few weeks. Supposed to take a month ago, but
you know it goes, isn't it? Don't tell them on.
There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. So this will be our last pod. We're not going to
turn into an Olympic pod, no? We're not. No.
Oh, jeez. Okay. Can we have a break? Can we have a week off? Can I have a week off? You know what I mean? Is that all right? Can I have 1 week off? So this will be our last pod if England lose to Holland. If not, we will do another pod next week. So I think there will be a lot of fun. So stick with us till next week, because hopefully there will be doing a pod with England as European champions. That'll be sick. I'm
really sorry. Are we cutting now?
Well, it was going to, but go on.
Do you know the thing? The player that we haven't mentioned who has actually been pivotal to a slight... Forget Pickford. Mainu. I
wouldn't say he's been pivotal.
No, he has been pivotal. Do you know why? Really because he's gone... You've now not... No one's talking about centre mid anymore. No, people are not talking about centre mid anymore.
I am. I think he's played really well. I think he's played really well, and I wouldn't have an issue with him starting.
What do you mean wouldn't have an issue? Who's going to take his place?
Yeah, I'm cool. I don't play him. I'm not saying don't play him. I just don't think his performances have been better than what was there before, but not so good that he's transformed the midfield. England is still poor.
A midfield that actually Declan Rice is not performing well.
No.
I'll tell you that now. I've never seen the lad kick the ball out of place so many times, look uncomfortable on the ball, and I'm not being disrespectful here. Jude is, as we've already said,
poor, but
right, yeah. So don't underestimate this 18-year-old lad playing in his first competition, moving the ball better than those slightly more experienced players, and providing some quality where is needed.
I'm happy for him.
So you go and sing about your star boy. I'm happy. Let me just produce Mainu into the conversation. Yeah. I'm not saying he's at that level, but
good. Just let's get that in there before we wrap, because Mainu's definitely been an upgrade on what's been there before, 100%. And I have no issue with him starting. But I still feel that team is not right.
No, it's not right.
And I think your point about Kane is a bigger point. Kane, listen, I hope that I'm here next week with you guys and I'm saying I said that I'd drop Kane, but that's why you start Kane. Yeah, I'm hoping that there's that one chance where he shuts me up and proves me wrong, because that's why I think Southgate's playing. Southgate's thinking, you're not playing well, but if we get that one chance, I want it to fall to you. It's unlike Watkins and Tony, I know you will take it. Yeah. The problem is, that chance might not come. That chance might not come.
Not being very creative.
No. Yeah. So we'll see how it goes. Anyway, listen, enough football for now. Hopefully, as I mentioned, we'll be back next week to talk about England being European champions. But for now, we're going to be talking about some politics and the incoming or the now established Labour Party. Okay, to kind of continue football parlance speak, we're making a substitution. Troy's had to dip out. He's had to leave us because he's got a train to catch to do something. I don't know what he's doing. But we've upgraded. So it's a bit like, how can I do it? It's a bit like my guest sports Liverpool. So it'd be like, I don't know, who's not very good in the Liverpool team? I don't know. Nunez coming off, but we're bringing on Salah. Yeah, we've got Salah coming on, all right? So we've definitely upgraded. I'm joined for our discussion on politics and the kind of shake-up that's happened in the last week by Mike Bankole, who's a lecturer in politics at Royal Holloway University. You specialise, correct me if I'm wrong here, in race, racism and the makeup, representation amongst politicians and parliament. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's me.
Thank you very much for coming on the pod today. Really appreciate it. It's an interesting time. If we've got time, we'll get some football chat at the end, because as I mentioned, you're a Liverpool fan and you're watching the Euros like the rest of us. We were just saying before, you've been bored to tears. So we might get to that. But I want to talk to you a little bit about the new government that we have. And I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on not so much the reaction to how it played out, because we did that last week, but more what you make of a Keir Starmer Labour government through the prism of being a Black Briton.
It's an interesting one, because I think when you look at the start of his parliament, so we look at, or the start of the last parliament, so we had Black Lives Matter being a big issue, we had these big protests being an issue. I think a lot of Black voters would have been underwhelmed by Starmer's response to that. But I don't think Starmer had this really strong line of really supporting Black communities during that moment. And I think since then, there really hasn't been a strong attempt to reach out to Black voters. I think Labour will make things better, right? It's hard to make things worse than they have been.
By default.
By default. And I think there are some good things Labour are going to propose, right? But I think if you're a Black voter, you will be looking at Labour with kind of like a bit of like a, like, let's see. Because, like I said, the response to Black Lives Matter, the Ford report which came out, and it's emerged in the last couple of weeks that Labour wanted to actually stop that report from coming out in the first place. So there's so much, even the treatment of the candidate in Clacton, Jovan, there's rumours or reports rather in The Voice that they wanted him to be kind of like kept away because he was gaining so much traction and stuff. So I do think that there are plenty of questions for Labour to answer when it comes to Black voters and their offering for Black voters. But I definitely think, given where we are as a nation, most people's lives will be made better by a Labour government, because things have been so bad for so many people. And that's the key, right? For the Labour government, they need to make people's lives better so they can stay in government.
Of course. And one thing I'm really keen to kind of see how this plays out is, obviously Labour and the government aren't here to serve Black Britons exclusively, but because me and the three other guys I do the podcast with, and yourself, we are Black men, Black people, that's our kind of prism, right? So what for you would be the wins for Black Britons under a Labour government? What is it that you're expecting Labour to do that would enhance the lives of Black people in this country?
I think there are several things. So I think when it comes to Black voters, we don't particularly have a different set of interests to other voters in terms of, we all care about the economy, we all care about welfare, we all care about housing, all these other issues. But I think when it comes to these different things I mentioned, there are racialised outcomes. So what a Labour government will need to do for Black voters is to think about, okay, yes, we need to address housing. Yes, we need to address employment issues, but also we need to think about the groups that are suffering the most from these issues. So we think about employment. Who's are the most likely to be working in low pay, insecure pay, kind of these 0-hour contracts? Black and Asian people, right? So how can we address that? How can we make their work more secure? How can we make their lives more secure? Who's more likely to be living in overcrowded homes? Black and Asian people in this country. So how do we make that, a positive situation for these people? So it's actually about viewing these various crises we have through the lens of race and understanding that it isn't just so much about Britain and British people suffering. There are particular people who are suffering more than others, and it's important we address that. There are working class people as well that in Britain are suffering, and most of those tend to be Black and Asian people, minorities. So I think it's really about focusing on the fact that, well, actually there are people who are suffering more than others during these various crises we face, and it's important we don't forget that. And it doesn't mean you just focus on Black people at the expense of others. But it's about making sure that you're conscious that people who are suffering the most come from particular backgrounds. And I think that's what Labour needs to do.
And what do you make of the representation of the government now? Because I think today there's going to be the final announcements of the government, but we're pretty much there in terms of who's going to make up his cabinet. And I think I'm right in saying that David Lammy is the only Black member of the cabinet. But what I'm interested in is how important that is, because I'm going to do something that's very dangerous to do, and particularly with Darren Lewis as well. I'm going to make an assumption of what I think he would say, and he speaks a lot about representation is important, and I agree with him on that. And he mentioned on our pod last week the fact that there is such a lack of representation in this government. And at the time, it wasn't announced who the government was going to be, but I think we had a sense of who was going to be in his government. And David Lammy was the only person at that point that was like fairly sure was going to be. How important is it that this government does have, Black members that are in really powerful, influential positions? Or actually, are we falling into the trap of what we had under the Tories, where they filled their cabinet with Black and brown people?
Yeah.
But our pushback was, what was it? Not all skin folk are a kinfolk.
Yeah. I think my takeaway from my research is we shouldn't glorify representation. So I think in one way it's important that we have, Black and Asian people on the front benches, right? Because they signal something about where the country's going. So the country over the last 30, 40 years, racism is still a problem, let's be clear, but it would have been unheard of in the 80s to have, Black and Asian people in as the Home Secretary, as the Chancellor, as the Foreign Secretary, because they weren't seen as legitimate political actors. That no longer is the case, right? We do see David Lammy, Kane Badenoch, etc., as people who can and should be in politics. The problem for me is this idea that this will automatically mean that Black people's lives are made better. We had Kane Badenoch in a high position. We had, Priti Patel, Jarrett-Bryan, Home Secretaries, Kwasi Kwarteng as a Chancellor. They had no interest whatsoever in trying to advance the rights or lives of minorities. And I think we need to be careful about this idea that representation will automatically mean that Black people's lives are made better. David Lammy, in my view, I thought he was a really powerful voice in the kind of Jeremy Corbyn years on Windrush, on the Grenfell fire. If you go back and look at his speeches, he was really powerful when he was speaking on those issues. Since Starmer's become the leader and he's kind of become part of Starmer's core team, you rarely hear David Lammy speak passionately about race. And racism hasn't disappeared. Hasn't disappeared for the last 4 or 5 years since Starmer's been leader, but you haven't seen David Lammy make this passionate rants about insecure work for Black people, about homelessness and housing issues for Black people. He hasn't really been there. So I think for me, I'm sceptical about the idea that, having David Lammy in a position of power is going to be great. Think of an issue like Palestine, for example, which many Black and Asian voters care deeply about because of, what it means for them. And David Lammy, for example, his stance on that's been quite weak as well as the Foreign Secretary. So I'm very sceptical about this idea that, we have more Black people in Parliament and in positions of power and it's going to, change things. But I do think that it is in some ways important for maybe young kids who are going and trying to get interested in politics, seeing someone who looks like them. That's a really important thing. When I was younger, I didn't really have any interest in politics. I was drawn, like most Black kids are, to football. Because I saw Thierry Henry, I saw Drogba, all these amazing Black players. And that's what drew me to football initially. I mean, politics kind of comes after that. So I do think from that sense it's important. But I think thinking about policies, I'm skeptical about the idea that, X is going to equal Y in terms of more Black people, better policies.
And how do you think Black politicians can straddle the situation of, look, as you mentioned, they're not there to serve Black people, but also as Black constituents, citizens, people that live in this country, we do expect them to have an understanding of many of the things that Black people in this country are going through. Because someone that maybe is of opposing politics to us may well say, well, look, they're not there to serve you, they're there to serve all of us, without understanding why it's important that they understand what a demographic of the country are going through and need. How does a Black politician straddle that politicking of doing their job, but also ensuring that they're kind of doing what they can do to support a demographic of people that may be at the bottom in particular areas of society?
I think what most Black people want is just a vocal voice for them, right? So no one is saying that you should represent Black people at the expense of your constituents, for example, or Black people at the expense of your party. What we're saying is there come times and moments in your career where you have the chance to speak up for Black people, where you have the chance to be a vocal ally for Black Britons in society. And that's when you should pounce. That's when you should be vocal. You should be at the vanguard of, when we're talking about racism and anti-racism, you should be there. You should be in the trenches with us because you know what it's like. You've experienced it. You've grown up maybe in working class families where you haven't had everything. So
what if they haven't?
If they haven't, then that's more difficult. But I think my thing is always, I think politicians love to play the I came from rags to riches story. I came from working. You don't have to. Sometimes it's just about being compassionate. Even if you haven't had that, rags to riches story, are you compassionate? Can you relate to your Black brothers and sisters despite having maybe not experienced what some of them have? That's what we want. And no one's saying that, hey, you're the MP for Newcastle Central, for example. You have to represent Black people in Britain, not your constituents in Newcastle who might be, white. No one's saying you should do that. We're just saying, there come times and moments when issues of race will come up and we want you to hopefully speak in our interests and defend us, because Black people for so many years in politics haven't been defended. No one's spoken for us. There have been a few vocal voices, Diane Abbott, Jeremy Corbyn, Dawn Butler, Bernie Grant, all these amazing people, but they're a small group of people and we want more MPs to fight our cause. That's simply it.
Who are the Labour MPs that you rate, black or not black? Who are the MPs that you think I'm glad that person is in that position in this government? That person's got a body of work that I can look at and believe in, and believe that they will do good. Who are the people that? Because my list is very small. There's very few politicians on both sides of left and right that I particularly rate. But who are the ones that you think, yeah, that person I believe, whether they do or not, it's to be seen, but actually I think they'll do good?
There are quite a few, so I think I love Diane Abbott. I think she's great. And I think if you look at her record for a number of years, she has been a vocal voice for black communities, and she has done some really good work in social justice more broadly. You think of someone like Bella Biradi, who's the MP for Clapham and Brixton Hill. I think that's in your constituency now. She's always been a vocal voice. Zara Sultana, Nadia Watome. And these MPs tend to be quite on the left of the Labour Party, and they do a really good job. But even MPs who aren't on the left, I love Stephen Timms. Stephen Timms, he did so much work when it came to the hostile environments and raising concerns about, British Caribbeans and their experience. And he was really, really vocal on that. So there are plenty of MPs in the Labour Party who I have time for. Actually, a friend of mine who we used to actually host a podcast together on politics, he's just been elected. And I would trust him to do a fairly good job. And I always say to people that he wouldn't be a household name now because he's just been elected, but maybe in 5 years' time, I think he'll rise up a party quite quickly, and he'll do some good stuff on the economy. He's an economist. His name's Jeevan Sander, and I think he'll do a good job. So there are some good eggs in the party, and I don't deny that at all. I think there are people who are going to do some amazing work, but it's about the party strategy more broadly, factoring in the fact that there are some issues that black voters care about, like housing, like the economy. I need to factor in the fact that black voters are disadvantaged in particular ways across these different sectors. That's the important thing. And I think those good eggs would continue to raise good concerns and be vocal, but it's about the party coming together and realising that.
I think when I look at this Labour government, I think there's two things that and I would love to get your couple of things that you're looking for from them. The two things I think is important that they need to kind of implement early. First of all, they need to be boring. They need to be boring. And what I mean by that is, and I've heard certain MPs kind of speak to this point, and I agree, they need to, for the next 6 months, even a year, just be boring. I think in this country, we need a level of stability where politics isn't volatile. Politics isn't leading the news in a way that it has for the last 4 or 5 years. No scandals, no nonsense. I think they've just got to, what Keir Starmer, in my opinion, has got to do. The first thing is just settle the ship. Let England win the Euros next week. Let's have a good summer. Yeah. Let's have a good Olympics. And no one hears about any MPs for the next 6 months. Just do your work. Just be boring. Yeah, people talk about, politicians with charisma and personality. No, I don't want a clown. We've gone past that time. So for me, the first thing is just be boring. Just get on with your job. But the second thing I think was important, I think is going to really determine whether Keir Starmer's government has a good first parliament, is get some quick wins under your belt. There are some systemic, some institutional things that I think will take time. It may take 2 parliaments, it may take 2 terms to fix certain things. The NHS won't be fixed in a year. The water situation won't be fixed in a year. Housing, those are things that I think are going to need long-term planning. And I don't think we can judge them for now. But there are some quick wins they can get in the first 6 months, year, that I think will make people think, they're getting things done. They are kind of slowly, that's getting better and that's getting better. And I really feel that if they're going to really stave off the right and stop people moving towards the Farages and the reforms, they have to very quickly show the public that we are getting stuff done. There are things they can't change in the first year, as I mentioned, but there are things I think they can change in the first 6 months, which I think will give people the confidence of believing this government are not only different to the previous one, but they're actually going to make things not only not bad, but they're going to make things better.
Yeah.
What are the things for you that you think in the first, let's say 18 months, need to be done to ensure that Keir Starmer can really show that all the talk he's been talking in the election lead up actually are kind of being backed up?
I think you make a good point about them just being sensible, just be adults, just be, because for the last 5 years, we've lurched from scandal to scandal. I mean, even towards the end of the Conservative time in government, we had a betting scandal.
Yeah.
there's always been a scandal.
Yeah.
They've never been too far away from a scandal.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. It's like the England football team in the mid-noughties, and there's always some kind of scandal around them. There's always something going on.
Yeah.
It was the manager, the players, So I think that's important, just being adults. And I think you make a good point about the far right as well, right? Because people seem to think that the way to deal with the far right is by being more right-wing on immigration. And Starmer's kind of already done that, in my view. He's already spoken about how Sunak was the most liberal prime minister on immigration because the numbers have risen in the last year. Now, that's nonsense, because what we've seen is migrants who come over to this country, their rights have been restricted. So yes, the numbers might be high, but their treatment's been quite poor. So I think the easy wins for Labour are making people's lives better, helping those who are in insecure work, dealing with zero-hour contracts, economic growth, making sure that people's lives get better as the economy grows. Those sorts of things are really important. Dealing with the climate crisis, which will affect people's lives in Britain. There will be more flash floods. There will be more, extreme weather conditions in Britain. How do we address that? Those sorts of things are things that Labour needs to do. And Labour can't change the world in 5 years, but they can make people's lives a lot better in 5 years. You can deal with the housing crisis. I think the announcement by Rachel Reeves yesterday was positive.
Yes.
They're going to build more homes. They're going to, reduce restrictions on building more homes. That's really important. So there's really small wins that, and I think it's about planting seeds. So sometimes it's about, you announce something like the housing thing tomorrow. It's not going to, that's not going to all of a sudden happen overnight, but you just plant a seed, and hopefully people see those seeds begin to grow as this parliament unfolds.
Do you think she needed to mention we're going to build more affordable homes? Because we've heard previous governments say before, we're going to build more homes. That's fine. We can all say that. But the problem isn't we're not building homes. Every day I go down, I go through London, I'm seeing new homes being built. That ain't the problem. The problem is no one can afford them. No one can afford to live in them. Yeah. So I think, I don't know if it was kind of like a deliberate statement that was kind of not vague, but quite left open to make sure that she can't be held accountable, because she may well build those homes, but there's no point if no one can afford them. Do you think that she kind of was let off the hook a little bit in the sense of building more homes is only half the job if no one can afford to live in them?
Well, I think they need to build more social homes. Okay. So when you think about the social housing stock, a lot of that's ended up in the hands of private landlords who then rent it out for far more than a council would. What we need to do is actually make sure that councils across the country have new social housing stock they can give to residents who need it, because those residents will tend to be people who are working class or maybe ethnic minorities, and most people ultimately need that cheap and affordable homes. They need those cheap and affordable homes to rent. So that's a really important thing, and I hope that the Labour government do kind of focus on building social homes and allowing councils to have access to them, because those are sorts of that's because I think the affordable homes issue, what is affordable? Affordable for me, that can vary from person to person. Yeah. So I think social homes always have been affordable and always have been accessible to people. Well, not recently, but they, in theory, should be accessible to those who are kind of the most working class, kind of the most suffering in this country. And I think that's what the government needs to focus on, building those kind of homes and addressing those issues. And that will make a lot of people's lives much better.
Final thing I wanted to mention as well is, I work in the media. You are a contributor for Novara Media as well. What role do the media and platforms like mine, mainstream, traditional, but the ones that you work for as well, which are digital, online, and non-traditional, have to play in holding this government accountable? Because we have a left-leaning, by definition, don't know if that's actually what they are, but that's a different discussion, a left-leaning government in power now. I'm on the left. I think I'm right and fair in saying that you're on the left too. Yeah. It's easier to kind of bash when the Tories are in government because we differ in politics. But how do we ensure that we don't let the fact that we have a government that, in theory, are on the same side of the political spectrum as we are, we don't give them the passes that we wouldn't have given the Tories? What's our role for this next 5 years now?
I think we need to make sure that we keep them honest. And I think one thing we need to see people on the left from Labour is a kind of slight tonal shift and a real shift actually in policy when it comes to compassion. I think that's one thing that's been missing from Labour's offering in the last kind of couple of years. And I think about the immigration issue. So on immigration, I don't think Labour have spoken compassionately about migrants. They've spoken about migrants contributing to Britain, and not even just contributing to Britain, they're just human beings. So Labour's offering on migration, for example, that's something we could easily push them on. And it's about we on the left have a set of values that we defend and we hold as sacrosanct. It's about holding this Labour government accountable to those values: compassion, justice, equality. Those are things that we care about on the left, and those are the values that we need to hold Labour to account on. So if in 2 years' time, for example, when it comes to, you know, work, and we're still seeing working class people, you know, in insecure work, on low pay, we're still seeing strikes across sectors and the government not really reaching out to those on strike and not really trying to strike deals. We're still seeing this kind of lacking compassion on immigration. The left should be the most vocal people on that. And we need to make sure that Labour and Starmer's Labour don't try to pander to the right, because I think, and I fear, the response to Reform's rise and the response to Farage will be, we need to move slightly to the right to make sure we don't lose more voters to Reform. That can't be the response. The response to the right, to kind of, and we've seen it in France, by the way, we've had left coalition done there. The response and the offering that they had was one built in compassion, empathy, equality, social justice. That's what the Labour's offering should be. The only way to beat the right isn't by becoming the right, isn't by becoming more fascist, isn't by becoming more right-wing. It's about making people's lives better, because the people who are more likely to vote for those right-wing parties, often they're the worst off. They're people whose lives have, you know, maybe they're suffering at the moment, and they're listening to a politician who said it's that person's fault, it's the migrant's fault. Labour can't fall into that trap. So I think we need to hold them accountable based on our values. And let's be absolutely clear. The right-wing press will hold them accountable.
Yes.
The Daily Mail will hold them accountable.
True.
The Express, etc. They'll hold them accountable, and we need to make sure we're doing our job in terms of holding them accountable to our values.
Yeah, true that. I love that. Listen, Mike, we don't have time to talk about football, unfortunately, but I promise when the season gets up and running. In fact, I'll ask you one question. Liverpool, what's happening? New manager, Arne Slot. Do you believe, or do you feel like maybe the Labour government, nice little parallel there, it may take a little while before you get the big wins?
Do you know what? I like the way he's talking.
Okay.
He's talking like, I'm the man. You know, so like in a subtle way, not in like a Mourinho, I'm special one way, but it's kind of like a, look, the club brought me here for a reason. I'm going to improve things. There's plenty of things we can improve. Let's get to work. I like it. I like what I'm seeing. You know, I'm not going to make any bold claims on the podcast because we haven't made any signings
this
yet.
is the pod. We need bold claims, Mike. But bold claims.
Don't be surprised if Liverpool competing for the title come the back end of the season, because like the way he's talking, it's moving me. Okay. I am very moved. Okay. So we'll have to see what he cooks up, but I like what he's been saying so far.
For sure. All right. I'm going to keep an eye on him because I don't know a lot about him, admittedly, but I like the fact that I haven't heard a lot about him since he's been in. I mean, I know that there's been election in Euros. I've been distracted, but he seems to be just like, I'm in, just doing the work, moving in silence. Yeah. It's like that often is the sign of confidence. I don't need to be loud. I don't need to tell you what I'm doing every minute. I'm just getting off my job and getting the team ready for the new year. So obviously I hope he bombs and fails as an Arsenal fan. I'm hoping that he finished 10th. That's what I'm hoping, but I fear that won't be the case. But listen, when the season gets up and running, we'll get you back in for sure. We can do more football talk as well. Darren would love to talk football in Liverpool as well. He's another Liverpool guy.
There we go, man. He's a good guy. I got the wrong host today.
You say that. You did. You really did. I promise next time we get you on, Darren and Hugh and the guys will be here. But listen, thank you very much for coming on the pod. And I think with this Labour government and the Premier League season, there'll be so much to discuss. So we'll happily invite you back in if you'll come back.
Absolutely. I'd love to come back.
Lovely. That's us this week. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. We're across all social platforms: TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Slap the subscribe button. Leave us a comment. What are your thoughts on this Labour government, and how hopeful are you that they will make most people's lives better? And the Euros, hopefully, as I mentioned earlier on, we'll be doing another pod next Tuesday with England as European champions. If not, this will be our last podcast for the summer. We'll be back in a few weeks' time.